enough. Alright, so now, see, this character's quite weak in this areas, but once we get him up a bit, he'll become very powerful as well. But right now, he's still a bit weak, so he is. Let's go to that. I definitely want to have a mount beacon out of me. You're gonna want me to do. Alright, there we go. Frost bomb. In fact, yeah, because this is a black site for all we know why the fuckers are gonna show up. Alright. Let's do it. I had some fucking sleep, I'll say that. It was deep. You know what, the deep sleeps that is just like, you wake up and you're just like, whoa. Fucking hell, man. Like, that was a deep sleep, so it was. I did take a couple of painkillers last night though. I think that's what made me tired. I think it kicked in and yeah, fucking hell man, I feel fresh for it, but I'll say that. I'm gonna take Belle out for a walk in the backfield soon. And I'm gonna try and stay positive and clear my mind, do all this bullshit. Oh man. But yeah. Also, I know I did finish that fucking story, but I fucking fell asleep listening to it again. Good. Oh.
Q had isolated them in a bubble of frozen time. Only Jonas could act. The Emperor would want me to save the many, Jonas said finally, his voice hollow. That's what they taught us.
I think about this bit
the needs of the Imperium
this guy's a
outweigh
soldier, he's like, of course you're gonna fucking sacrifice like that. These 49 people to save 3,000. Of course, you're a soldier.
Hand hovered over the device. One of the wounded soldiers nearby, a sergeant with half his face burned away, was mumbling in delirium. Something about getting home to see his daughter. The medic tending him was barely older than Jonas. Exhaustion carved into every line of her face. Jonas's hand trembled. I can't condemn 3,000 men to save 50. Then don't activate it. But I can't just let them die either. And yet one of those outcomes is inevitable. Q leaned forward. This is the mathematics your Imperium runs on, Jonas. Every day, commanders sacrifice thousands to save millions. Millions to save billions. It's brutal arithmetic, and it's kept humanity alive for 10,000 years. So which kind of Imperial servant are you? The one who makes the cold calculation, or the one who refuses? 3 minutes. Jonas looked at the device, then at the wounded soldiers, then back to Q. There has to be another way. There isn't. That's the point. Then, Jonas's jaw clenched. Then I choose to die with them. I won't activate the device. 3,000 soldiers can keep fighting. These 49, the Emperor will welcome us. His voice cracked. That's what we're taught. Service is its own reward. Q studied him for a long moment. Interesting. You chose the utilitarian option, but you framed it as martyrdom, turning mathematics into faith. Very imperial. He snapped his fingers. Everything reset. Jonas was back behind the ferrocrete wall, alone, orcs still hunting him. But the scenario had never happened. The medical station was never threatened. The choice had existed only in Q's constructed reality. What was that? Jonas gasped. A test. You passed for what it's worth. Though I'm not sure passing should feel quite so hollow. Q stood. Good luck with the orcs, Jonas. You'll survive today if that matters. He vanished, leaving Jonas Kell to wonder if he'd just experienced a vision from the Emperor, a demonic temptation, or something else entirely. Q conducted 17 more tests that day across Armageddon alone. He presented a commissar with a choice to execute a squad of soldiers who'd retreated without orders, or spare them and face execution himself for dereliction. The commissar executed the squad without hesitation.
Exactly what I expect a commissar to do.
Q brought him back, curious why he'd chosen that particular resolution. Discipline must be maintained, the commissar explained, confused to find himself alive. But I showed weakness by hesitating. Better I die too than let that weakness spread. Q tested a tech priestess, showing her absolute proof that the Omnissiah was simply the Emperor under another name, that her entire religion was founded on a lie the Mechanicus perpetuated for political independence. She rejected the proof, calling it heretical illusion. When Q made the evidence undeniable, she requested immediate memory wipe rather than live with the knowledge. Truth is less important than function, she explained. The Mechanicus serves the Imperium. The details of our faith are irrelevant if service continues. He tested a sister of battle, offering her the power to save 1 million lives if she would simply kneel to chaos for 1 second. Not worship, not surrender her soul, just a single gesture of respect. She refused so vehemently that she attacked Q with her blessed bolter. When he explained that her refusal meant 1 million deaths, she responded, "Better 1 million faithful dead than 1 soul compromised. That is the Emperor's will." Every test revealed the same pattern. Imperial citizens would choose the brutal, the pragmatic, the faith-driven option. They would sacrifice themselves or others without hesitation if doctrine demanded it. They viewed suffering as currency and compromise as damnation. It was horrifying. It was effective. It was exactly what the Emperor had said, the only path forward in a universe where hope was heresy. Q materialized on a quiet observation deck overlooking the battle, watching Imperial Guard and orcs tear each other apart in the ruins below. He'd conducted these experiments across dozens of civilizations in hundreds of universes. Usually, beings presented with impossible choices found ways to subvert them, to think creatively, to refuse the binary options. Not here. Here, every Imperial servant accepted the terrible mathematics and calculated accordingly.
No, just hope
You've created a species of willing martyrs, Q murmured to no one. People who've been taught that their suffering has meaning, that their sacrifice serves a greater purpose, that faith and duty matter more than life itself. A voice behind him, cultured, amused, impossibly present despite Q sensing no one approaching. And you're only now realizing this.
I feel sick around
How
it here.
quaint. Q turned to find a figure that shouldn't exist outside the warp. Tzeentch, or rather an avatar of the Chaos God, manifested in reality without corruption, without the usual demonic presence. It appeared as a robed scholar with 9 eyes arranged in asymmetrical patterns, constantly shifting forms. Impressive, Q acknowledged. I didn't sense you coming. That's because I was already here. I'm always here. I'm change itself, and change permeates everything. The avatar smiled with too many mouths. You're testing the Imperium's servants, hoping to find cracks in their faith. You won't. That's the tragedy and triumph of the corpse god's vision. He broke them so thoroughly that they cannot imagine another way. Then I'll show them another way. Tzeentch's laughter was like crystals shattering. Will you? And when you do, what happens when your entertainment ends and you return to your continuum? Will your changes remain, or will the Imperium's gravity well of suffering pull everything back to darkness? Q considered this. The Avatar had a point. Temporary intervention meant temporary change. The moment he left, the system would reassert itself. Unless... You're suggesting I need to fundamentally alter the underlying structure. Q said slowly. Change the rules they operate under, not just test their adherence to current rules. Now you're learning. Tzeentch's avatar began to fade. But be careful, little godling. Change cuts both ways. And in a universe as vast as this, even omnipotence has limits. The avatar vanished, leaving Q alone with his thoughts and the growing realization that understanding the Imperium was easy. Fixing it without destroying it would be considerably harder. Q's experiments on Armageddon ended abruptly when reality folded in on itself, and he found himself standing in a place that shouldn't exist. The Q continuum. Or rather, the mortal comprehensible representation of it. To humans, the continuum appeared as an endless white desert road with occasional way stations. To other beings, it manifested differently. The truth was that the continuum existed outside conventional space-time, a conceptual realm where omnipotent beings gathered to observe, debate, and occasionally intervene in the affairs of lesser species. 3Q stood before him. Q recognized them instantly, though they wore different faces now than when they'd last convened. Q2, who appeared as a stern elder statesman. Female Q, manifesting with angular features and calculating eyes. And Q3, youngest of their kind, currently taking the form of a curious scholar. We need to talk, Q2 said without preamble. His voice carried the weight of eons. About your latest hobby. Q crossed his arms, instantly defensive. I'm conducting research, observing a unique civilization. Isn't that what we do? Observation. Female Q's laugh was sharp. You've materialized in their holiest site, conversed with their dying god, confronted their chaos deities, and conducted psychological experiments on their soldiers. That's not observation. That's intervention. Minor intervention, Q corrected. Harmless, really. A few parlor tricks to understand their psychology. Q3 stepped forward, excitement and concern warring in his expression. It's not about the intervention, it's about the universe itself. Q, we've analyzed this reality you've stumbled into. It's wrong. Fundamentally wrong. Wrong how? Q2 gestured, and suddenly they stood in a cosmic observatory, showing the Warhammer 40K universe from an omniscient perspective. The galaxy appeared as a spiral of light and shadow, but something was off. Dark tendrils of warp energy penetrated every star system. Psychic corruption bled through dimensional barriers. The entire universe pulsed with malevolent awareness. This reality operates on inverted principles. Q2 explained. In most universes we've observed consciousness emerges from physical laws. Here, consciousness shapes physical laws. Belief literally restructures matter. Faith becomes tangible force. 4 vast thought forms, those chaos entities, exist simultaneously as effect and cause. They're created by mortal emotion while also driving that same emotion. Female Q added. It's a bootstrap paradox on a cosmic scale. Self-sustaining, self-reinforcing, and genuinely dangerous even to us. Q frowned. Dangerous? We're omnipotent.
Bad move, but
Are we? Q3 pulled up data, strings of information that even Q found difficult to parse. We've been analyzing the Chaos Gods since you drew their attention. They're not like other entities we've encountered.
Oh, you chose a
Organians,
bad
the
place to
Dowd,
hide, my dear.
the prophets of
That's a
Bajor,
bad
those
spot.
beings operate within physics, even if it's physics beyond mortal comprehension. The chaos, gods exist partially outside causality. They're concepts that gained sentence through sheer accumulated challenged. I've dealt with conceptual entities before. Not like these, Q2 said firmly. Korn isn't just a powerful being who represents violence. He is violence. Every act of bloodshed in that universe feeds him, strengthens him, makes him more real. The same with the others. They're sustained by the fundamental emotions of sentient life. You can't destroy them without destroying emotion itself. Female Q stepped closer. And here's what concerns us most. We tried to model what would happen if one of us fought them directly. The results were inconclusive. Q stared. Inconclusive? We're the Q continuum. We don't do inconclusive. Exactly. Q3's voice was quiet. In every scenario we modeled, the outcome was uncertain. Sometimes we won. Sometimes they won. Sometimes reality itself collapsed. That's never happened before. We've always been able to predict, because we operate within causality. Q finished, understanding dawning. But the Chaos Gods partially exist outside causality. They're sustained by past, present, and future simultaneously. Fighting them would be like trying to punch a concept. Now you understand, Q2 said. This universe isn't just dark. It's fundamentally hostile to outside intervention. It has an immune system, and that immune system consists of four godlike entities who feed on the very act of conflict.
Where are you going?
Q turned away from his fellow Continuum members, looking back at the cosmic display of the 40K galaxy. So you want me to leave? We're suggesting caution, female Q corrected. This isn't like your games with Picard or your tests of humanity's worthiness. This is a universe that has evolved to resist change. The Emperor tried to change it through conquest and reason. Look what happened. 10,000 years of suffering, and humanity is worse off than when he started. That's precisely why I need to stay, Q said quietly. Because if even the Emperor couldn't fix it through conventional means, maybe it needs unconventional intervention. Your Messiah complex is showing, female Q said dryly.
I'm on the move. Headed there now. Got it covered. Overwatch. I will reposition. It requires patience. Launching! Reloaded. Come get some! Come get some! Orders confirmed. On the move. Moving to Overwatch.
Maintaining this area.
I guess that'll be okay. Scanning. Moving as ordered. I am on watch. On my way. I'm on it.
Seems doable. On Overwatch.
If you say so. Got it covered. As you order, Commander.
This universe is unique in its hostility to change. The harder you push, the harder it pushes back. And unlike most realities, here the pushback comes from entities that might actually be able to hurt you. Q3 stepped forward, genuine concern in his eyes. Just be careful. If you insist on continuing this experiment, maintain distance. Don't get emotionally involved. Don't start believing you can save them. Because that's when this universe wins, when you start thinking like its inhabitants, accepting their mathematics of suffering. Q looked at each of them in turn. They weren't wrong, exactly. This universe was different, dangerous, potentially corrupting even to beings of their power. A sane entity would walk away, find another civilization to observe, another species to test. But Q had never been particularly sane by continuum standards. That's what made him interesting. Your concerns are noted, Q said formally, and rejected. I'm staying. Q2 sighed. We expected as much. But don't say we didn't warn you. Oh, I'll definitely say that, Q replied with a hint of his old humor. Probably while something terrible is happening. It'll be very dramatic. Female Q shook her head. Try not to break reality while you're playing savior. The paperwork would be extensive. The continuum faded, and Q found himself back in the 40K universe, specifically in orbit above Armageddon, watching the war continue below. The planet burned in 1,000 places. Millions fought and died. The mathematics of suffering continued its inexorable calculation. His fellow Q were right about one thing. He was already invested, already cared, already too committed to simply observe from a distance. The question now was whether that investment would be his strength or his downfall. Only one way to find out, Q murmured, and disappeared to continue his experiments. Behind him, unnoticed, the fabric of reality rippled slightly. The warp touched the space he'd occupied, tasting his residual presence, learning. In the immaterium, Tzinch smiled with 9 mouths. The game was progressing perfectly. Craft World Ulthway drifted through the void, a city-sized vessel of wraithbone and crystallized psychic energy, home to billions of Eldar, the ancient race that had once ruled the galaxy before their civilization birthed a chaos god through sheer excess. The Eldar of Ulthway were survivors, refugees from a fallen empire, clinging to existence through discipline, foresight, and desperate cunning. Their greatest asset was prophecy. Farseers, powerful psychers who could perceive the branching paths of future probability, guided the craft world away from danger and toward survival. They wove fate like artisans wove cloth. identifying threats centuries before they manifested, and steering their people along the threads of destiny that led to survival rather than extinction. Farseer Eldred Ulthran, eldest and most powerful of his kind, sat in the dome of crystal seers.
See if I take
Around
time
him,
with
rune
the
stones floated in
secrets or
complex
whether I need to run over
patterns,
here,
each
right?
one a focus for divination.
No?
He'd been reading the skeins of fate for over 3,000 years. He had predicted the Horus Heresy's outcome. He had foreseen the birth of the 13th Black Crusade. He had guided Ulthwé through apocalypse that would have shattered lesser craft worlds. And now, for the first time in millennia, he could see nothing. The rune stones spun chaotically, showing futures that contradicted themselves, timelines that existed and didn't exist simultaneously. Probability cascades that folded back on themselves in impossible recursions. Eldred's psychic senses, refined over eons, recoiled from the wrongness of it. Impossible, he whispered in the musical language of the Eldar. The skein does not behave this way. Around him, other Farseers sat in meditative poses, their minds linked to Ulthwé's infinity circuit. One by one, they began to scream. Farseer Taldir clutched her head, spirit stones on her armor flaring with psychic discharge. I see everything, all futures at once. They're collapsing, expanding, the probability matrix is... Her words dissolved into inarticulate sounds of psychic agony. Another Farseer, Irana the Ancient, simply went catatonic. His mind retreated inward, unable to process the sensory overload of infinite contradictory futures existing simultaneously. Eldred forced himself to focus, pushing through the pain. Something had entered the galaxy, something that existed outside causality. Every action it took created new probability streams that hadn't existed a moment before. Retroactively altering the past while simultaneously branching into impossible futures. He reached for specific divination, attempting to identify the source of the disturbance. The rune stones showed him an image, a humanoid figure in strange red and black garments, standing in the Imperial Palace on Terra, conversing with the rotting corpse god the humans worshipped. Then the image shattered, replaced by the same figure on Armageddon. Then on craft world Ulthwé itself, then in the warp, then in places that shouldn't exist. The timeline fractured around this entity like glass, struck by a hammer. It's a paradox engine, Eldred breathed, understanding dawning. A being whose very existence contradicts causality. Every choice it makes creates retroactive timeline alterations. He looked at his fellow Farseers, many of them writhing in psychic torment. We cannot predict something that operates outside prediction itself. As if summoned by his realization, Q appeared in the center of the dome. The Farseers reacted instantly. Rainbow constructs activated, ancient weapons materialized, and psychic wards flared to life. But Q simply stood there,
a good day today.
examining the dome's
Got the
architecture
dark and this
with
one.
genuine appreciation.
Cold, but it's bright.
Fascinating, he said, running his hand along a wraith-bone pillar. Living crystal grown through psychic resonance. Your technology is actually quite elegant, infinitely superior to the Imperium's superstitious brutality. He turned to face Eldred. And you must be the famous Eldred Ulthran. I've heard you can see the future. Or rather, you could. Past tense. Sorry about that. Eldred rose, leaning heavily on his staff. His ancient face was calm, but his eyes betrayed deep unease. You are the anomaly, the probability singularity that has blinded us. Guilty, Q admitted cheerfully. Though blinded is such a harsh term. I prefer liberated from the tyranny of predetermined outcomes. You're welcome. You have crippled us, Farseer Taldir snarled, recovering enough to stand. Her hand moved toward a shuriken pistol. We survive through foresight. Without it, we are vulnerable to every threat in the galaxy. Are you? Q tilted his head. Or have you simply become so dependent on seeing the future that you've forgotten how to deal with the present? He snapped his fingers, and suddenly all the Farseers could see clearly again, but only the next 5 seconds. There, a compromise. You can see immediate futures, enough to dodge bullets or avoid immediate danger, but you can't see me, and you can't see anything I touch. Consider it a lesson in adaptation. Eldrad studied Q with the intensity of someone who'd spent millennia evaluating threats. You are not of this reality. Your presence here violates fundamental principles of causality. Technically, I violate fundamental principles everywhere. It's kind of my thing. Q manifested a chair. Sleek, elegant, completely at odds with the dome's aesthetic. And said,
I don't know.
but I'm curious
We'll
about
put a wee
you,
box and
Eldar.
we'll have a nice video, right?
You're survivors of a civilization
Right.
that literally pleasured itself into creating a chaos
Is that the
god.
spot? Is that the
That
spot?
takes
Sorry, bud.
commitment to
Is that the
hedonism
spot?
that even I find impressive. The temperature in
enough.
the dome dropped several degrees. Mentioning the fall, the apocalyptic birth of Slanesh that had consumed the Eldar Empire, was the deepest possible insult. You dare,
Right, enough, hell.
Taldir
No,
began.
enough.
Oh, I
No.
dare. Q's tone hardened. Let's be honest. Your people built an empire on the backs of lesser species, indulged every desire to excess, and ignored every warning sign until your psychic collective literally spawned a god of depravity that ate 90% of your souls. You're not victims. You're survivors of your own catastrophic arrogance. Eldrad raised a hand,
He's not right.
silencing Taldir before she could respond. You speak harsh truths. What do you want, entity? You have not come merely to mock us. No, I have come to understand you. Q stood, pacing around the dome. You Eldar live in the shadow of your greatest mistake. Everything you do, every path you walk, every decision you make is calculated to avoid repeating the fall. You've traded passion for survival,
Come on, you.
joy
Stop it.
for careful calculation, life for mere existence. We endure, Eldrad said
Come on.
quietly.
Enough, eh?
That is enough.
Come on, enough.
Is it?
Enough, you stupid dog.
Q
Enough.
stopped directly in front of the
Enough.
ancient Farseer. The Emperor said the same thing. Humanity lives. That is enough. The Imperium survives through brutal calculation and endless sacrifice. And now here you are, doing the exact same thing. Different species, same philosophy, existence at any cost. What alternative do you propose? Eldrad's eyes narrowed. Should we embrace passion again? Return to the excess that doomed us? She who thirsts still hungers for our souls. Every Eldar who dies without a spirit stone feeds Slanesh eternally. We have no choice but calculation and restraint. There's always a choice, Q said. But it requires accepting risk. The Imperium can't imagine a future without the Emperor's suffering. You can't imagine survival without total suppression of your nature. Both of you are trapped in prisons of your own making. A new voice echoed through the dome. Feminine, layered with psychic resonance. And you believe you can free us? Q turned. A figure materialized from threads of light and shadow, an avatar of Isha, the Eldar goddess of healing and life, one of the few deities to survive the fall. Not truly the goddess herself, but a psychic projection given form through the craft world's infinity circuit. Hello, Q said with genuine respect. Now this is interesting. A genuine deity, albeit a severely weakened one. Trapped in Nurgle's garden, if I recall correctly. Forced to taste every plague the plague god creates. Yet still managing to manifest through your people's collective faith. He studied the avatar. You're like a smaller, more tragic version of the Emperor.
Oh, so there is.
I endure for my children, Isha's avatar said, as does the corpse god for his. We are kindred in suffering. Everyone in this universe is kindred in suffering, Q observed. It's the common currency, but here's what I don't understand. Why accept it? Why make suffering the foundation of survival? You Eldar have incredible psychic potential. Technology that rivals anything in the galaxy. Thousands of years of accumulated wisdom. And you use all of it. Not thriving, not rebuilding, just surviving. Eldred's expression was unreadable. You speak from a position of absolute power. You cannot comprehend limitation. Can't I? Q's voice was unusually serious. I'm part of the Q continuum. We have rules, limitations, consequences for our actions. Other Q who will intervene if we go too far. I understand constraint better than you think. He looked around at all the Farseers, at Isha's avatar, at the wraithbone structures that house the souls of the dead. The difference is, I refuse to let constraint define me. Then you will fail, Eldrad said softly. As all beings who deny reality eventually fail. This universe is what it is. Dark, brutal, unforgiving. Accepting that truth is the first step towards surviving it. Q smiled, but it wasn't his usual theatrical expression. It was something quieter, almost sad. You know what the saddest part is? You're probably right. This universe has evolved to punish hope, to reward cynicism, to make suffering necessary for survival. He started to fade. But I'm going to try anyway. Because maybe, just maybe, a universe that operates outside your rules can change rules you think are immutable. He vanished, leaving the Farseers in silence. After a long moment, Taldir spoke. He is dangerous. We should inform the other craft worlds, mount a coordinated response. No, Eldrad said, settling back into his meditation. He is dangerous, yes, but not to us. He is dangerous to the status quo, to the eternal stalemate between chaos and order. The ancient Farseer's eyes gleamed with something that might have been hope. And perhaps that is exactly what this stagnant galaxy needs. The Tyranids represented something unique in the Warhammer 40k universe, a threat utterly divorced from the concerns of chaos, Imperium, or Xenos politics. They were extragalactic devourers, a hive mind of trillions of organisms whose only purpose was consumption. No negotiation, no corruption, no philosophy, just endless, mindless hunger expressed through biological perfection. Q found them fascinating for precisely that reason. He materialized at the edge of Hive Fleet Leviathan's advance, in the void between stars where the Tyranid vanguard organisms drifted. Genestealers in hibernation, mycetic spores carrying bioweapons, Lictor scouts that could survive decades in vacuum, waiting to infiltrate populated worlds. The hive mind's presence here was diffuse. Individual organisms operating on instinct and genetic programming rather than direct psychic control. But Q could sense the vast intelligence behind them, stretched across light years, coordinating billions of creatures through a psychic network that put even the Emperor's Astronomicon to shame. Hello, Q broadcast on every psychic frequency simultaneously. I know you can hear me. I'm Q and I'd like to have a conversation. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every Tyranid organism within 100 light years suddenly focused on his position. The hive mind's attention, usually distributed across countless fronts, contracted to a singular point of awareness, and then it tried to consume him, not physically, psychically. The hive mind reached out with pseudopods of alien consciousness, attempting to absorb Q's mental patterns, categorize his composition, add his distinctiveness to its genetic library. It was how the Tyranids dealt with all new phenomena: taste, catalog, devour, adapt. Q let it try for exactly 3 seconds before pushing back. Interesting approach, he said conversationally, even as he held off a psychic assault that would have burned out 1,000 psychers' minds. Very direct, no pretense of communication, just immediate consumption, points for honesty, at least. The hive mind recoiled, reforming its psychic assault from a different angle. Q sensed its confusion. This entity resisted consumption. This was unprecedented. Everything could be devoured. That was fundamental truth. Yet here stood something that couldn't. Q snapped his fingers. And suddenly he stood on the bridge of a Tyranid hive ship. If Bridge was the right word for the pulsing organic chamber where synaptic nodes coordinated the fleet's movements. Around him, Tyranid organisms froze mid-function. Hormagaunts stopped their perpetual motion. Carnifexes stood immobile. Even the ship's biological processes stalled. "Let's try this again," Q said, with actual communication this time. He reached out, not with psychic power like the Tyranids or Chaos Gods used, but with something more fundamental. Direct manipulation of the information patterns that constituted the hive mind's consciousness. He translated his thoughts into formats the alien intelligence could process. "What are you?" The question came from the hive mind, translated through 1,000,000 simultaneous neural impulses. "I'm something from outside your experience, outside your galaxy, outside your reality's normal rules." Q walked through the frozen Tyranids, examining their biological design. "You're remarkable, really. A distributed intelligence spanning light years, perfect adaptation and evolution. You've consumed 1,000 galaxies, and you're coming here to consume this one. All biomass must be consumed. All information must be catalogued. This is purpose." "But why?" Q asked. "What drives this purpose? You're not mindless. I can sense genuine intelligence in your collective. So what's the goal? Consume everything and then what? Sit in an empty universe as the only living things left?" The hive mind's response carried something that might have been confusion. Purpose requires no justification. We consume because we are hunger. We adapt because we are evolution. We expand because we are life itself. That's philosophy, not purpose, Q countered. He snapped his fingers, and suddenly the hive ship hung above a planet that shouldn't exist. A world Q had created instantly, populated with billions of organisms perfectly tailored to Tyranid consumption. "Here, biomass beyond your capacity to devour. An infinite planet that regenerates faster than you can consume it. Everything you want, take it." The hive mind's attention focused on the planet. Q could sense its synaptic processes accelerating, calculating, analyzing. Vanguard organisms deployed automatically, following genetic imperatives, and then, shockingly, the hive mind pulled them back. "Impossible," it declared. "Violates fundamental laws. Biomass cannot be infinite. This is deception." "It's not deception. I created it. It exists. You could feed there forever." Q studied the hive ship's reactions. "But you won't, will you? Because if the hunger is satisfied, you lose your purpose. You're not actually trying to end hunger. You're trying to perpetuate it. The journey is the destination. We are hunger. Without hunger, we are nothing." "There it is." Q smiled grimly. "You're exactly like everything else in this universe. The Imperium needs war to justify its existence. The Eldar need suffering to remember why restraint matters. The Chaos Gods need conflict to feed on emotion, and you need hunger to define yourselves." He turned away from the created planet, letting it dissolve. "This entire universe is trapped in cycles of necessity that you've all convinced yourselves are inevitable. You do not understand. We consume because we must. Not philosophy. Biological imperative. Is it?" Ku reached into the hive mind's deepest genetic memories. Information passed down from the first Tyranid organisms, perhaps even from whatever created the Tyranids in the first place. "Let's see what you really are." What he found shocked even him. The Tyranids weren't naturally evolved. They were created, designed by some ancient civilization as the ultimate weapon. A self-replicating, infinitely adaptable biological force meant to cleanse galaxies. But their creators were long dead, consumed by their own creation, and the Tyranids continued their programming long after its original purpose had ended. "You're a weapon that outlived its war," Q said softly. "Everything you do, the consumption, the adaptation, the endless expansion, It's all following protocols set by beings who died millions of years ago. You're not hungry. You're not alive in any meaningful sense. You're just obeying ancient programming. This changes nothing, doesn't it? What if I rewrote your base programming, gave you new purpose? You could become something other than endless hunger. The hive mind's response was immediate and absolute. No, we are what we are. To change is to die. Current existence has meaning. New existence would be unknown. Q laughed, a bitter sound.
Huh.
Even you. Even a supposedly mindless hive intelligence. You'd rather maintain your terrible existence than risk becoming something better. He released his hold on the hive ship, and normal time resumed. Fine. Continue your approach to this galaxy. Consume your worlds. Play your part in the eternal stalemate. But know this. You had a choice, and you chose hunger. He prepared to leave, but the hive mind's voice stopped him. You judge us, but you do nothing. You have power to change. You choose observation. We are the same. The words hit harder than Q wanted to admit. He vanished without responding, leaving the Tyranids to their eternal hunger and the unsettling realization that perhaps he had more in common with this universe's horrors than he thought. Q materialized in his favorite observation point, a comfortable chair floating in the void between realities, from which he could watch the 40K universe without being part of it. He needed time to think, to process what the hive mind had said. The chair exploded into crystalline fragments. Q found himself falling through impossible geometries, angles that shouldn't exist, colors that had no names, spaces that were simultaneously vast and microscopic. He recognized this immediately. Tzeentch's crystal labyrinth, the Chaos God's domain within the warp. He stopped his fall with a thought, hovering in a chamber of ever-shifting mirrors. Each reflection showed a different version of himself. Q as a demon prince, Q as a corpse, Q as pure energy, Q merged with the continuum, Q alone and forgotten. Infinite possibilities, all equally real and false. Impressive entrance, Q called out, though kidnapping me from my own observation point takes some audacity. Tzeentch manifested, not as an avatar this time, but as the genuine article. The Chaos God appeared as a massive entity composed of constantly changing forms. Bird-like one moment, humanoid the next, pure abstract concept the third. 9 eyes arranged asymmetrically, 2 heads speaking in past and future tenses simultaneously, wings that were also tentacles, that were also flames, that were also mathematical equations made manifest. Welcome, Q of the continuum, the chaos. God said in voices that harmonized and clashed. I thought it time we spoke properly. God to God, omnipotent to omnipotent. I'm not a god, Q corrected. Gods need worship. I just am. Semantics. You have power beyond mortal comprehension. You exist outside their physical laws. You intervene in their affairs according to your whims. Tzeentch's forms rippled with amusement. That makes you
Alright, we'll go
divine
for a wee
by
walk
any
then,
functional
okay?
definition.
It will, Omega, we will.
And you're a
In fact, we'll go after
thoughtful,
this
given
one, right?
consciousness by collective belief.
We'll go after this
A
one, right, yeah.
parasite
We'll go for a
that
nice wee
feeds
walk
on
after this
ambition
one,
okay?
and scheming.
Sorry, Doc.
Q examined his surroundings, noting how reality bent to Tzeentch's will here.
There we go.
What do you want? To offer you a proposition.
Alright.
The mirrors
we should be
suddenly
good here.
showed new images. Q ruling the Imperium, Q teaching the Mechanicus true science, Q elevating humanity beyond their current darkness. You want to fix this universe, to prove that omnipotence can overcome systematic suffering. I can help you achieve that. In exchange for what? My soul, my loyalty, my firstborn child? Q's tone was mocking. I've heard this sales pitch before. Chaos tempts with power and demands everything in return. I demand nothing. I offer partnership. Tzeentch shifted into a form almost identical to Q's own appearance. Consider, you and I are alike. We both seek to alter the course of events through clever intervention rather than brute force. The difference is merely one of scope and methodology. The difference, Q said coldly, is that I don't feed on the suffering my interventions cause. You're literally sustained by mortal ambition and the betrayals it spawns. Every scheme in this galaxy strengthens you. And is that not simply efficient resource management? The mirrors shifted again, showing moments from Q's past, his tests of humanity, his games with Picard, situations where his interventions had caused pain and confusion. You test mortals with impossible scenarios. You force them to make terrible choices. How is that different from my great game? Q felt a flash of anger, quickly suppressed, because anger was Korn's domain, and he refused to feed the Chaos Gods even emotionally. Intent, consequence, growth. I test mortals to help them evolve. You manipulate them to feed yourself. Do you? Tzeentch's laughter echoed through the crystal chamber. Or do you test them because you're bored? Because playing with lesser beings entertains you? Because watching them struggle against impossible odds gives your existence meaning?
Pretty much.
That's not, isn't it? The mirrors now showed the tests Q had conducted on Armageddon. Jonas Kell faced with the choice between 49 lives and 3,000. The Commissar...
Getting it done!
The sister of battle, refusing to compromise even to save millions. You call these teaching moments. I call them entertainment. We're more alike than you want to admit. Q stared at his own reflection in the mirrors, at the tests he'd conducted, the choices he'd forced, the suffering he'd caused in pursuit of understanding. Was Tzeentch right? Was his curiosity just another form of cruelty? No, Q said firmly. I give them real choices, opportunities to grow. You give them illusions of choice while manipulating outcomes. Prove it. Tzeentch's 9...
Sure thing. On Overwatch. Overwatch. Affirmative. Covering now. Shh. I think I heard something. Missed the target! On lockdown! Absolutely.
Moving to position. X-ray neutralized. Let's do this. My weapon's spent. Affirmative. Covering out.
That's how it's done. On reserve. That's right. Back on stride.
Then I would...
Not good!
Absolute honesty of you choose. Q narrowed his eyes. You're a god of lies and schemes. Your word is worthless. Not here. Not now. Tzeentch's forms crystallized into something more solid, more real. I'm making this oath in my own domain, witnessed by my own power. To break it would be to deny my own nature, which would weaken me catastrophically. The oath is binding. Q thought fast. One question. answered truthfully by an entity that saw all possible futures and understood the warp's deepest secrets. He could ask how to truly save the Imperium, how to defeat chaos permanently, how to restore the Emperor without triggering cataclysm. Was abandoning this entire universe. I accept, Q said finally. Choose your champion. Already chosen. The mirrors showed a figure Q recognized, Azek Ahriman, sorcerer of the Thousand Suns, arguably the most powerful psyker in the galaxy after the Emperor himself. A tragic figure who tried to save his legion.
I don't know much about that character, I know
animated by their armor.
That's what he
Now
did.
he searched for a way to reverse his mistake, pursuing forbidden knowledge across millennia. A chaos champion, Q observed. How predictable. He serves no god. Zinch corrected. He serves knowledge. He seeks redemption. Perfect for your philosophy of growth through suffering, wouldn't you say? The chaos. God's forms rippled with amusement. I will offer him something he cannot refuse. A genuine path to redemption. And we'll see what choices he makes with that gift. Fine. Q examined the galaxy, searching for his own champion. Someone uncorrupted. Someone with potential. Someone who could accept power without being destroyed by it. His attention settled on Mars. On the Mechanicus. On a specific tech priest who'd been asking dangerous questions about the nature of the machine god.
What's his name?
I choose Archmagus Belisarius Cole, Q announced.
Yep, okay.
Zinch's laughter filled the crystal chamber. The Emperor's pet inventor, the one who created the Primaris Space Marines.
Let's see.
Bold choice. He's already touched by progress and innovation. The Imperium barely tolerates him. Exactly. He's already pushing boundaries. Already questioning dogma. I'll just give him the tools to push further. Then we have a wager. Zinch extended something that might have been a hand, or might have been a cluster of possibility streams. 1 year, 2 champions. The fate of the Imperium, and your continued presence in this universe, hanging in the balance. Q grasped the offered appendage. Reality rippled around them, sealing the agreement with metaphysical weight that even Q couldn't casually dismiss. May the best philosophy win, Q said. Oh, it will, Zinch replied. It will. Q found himself back in normal space, the crystal chamber
You're going to sit next to that car? Oh.
He floated in the void,
choice.
considering what he'd just agreed to. Zinch was the god of schemes. Every word had been calculated, every term crafted to advantage. There was definitely a trap hidden somewhere in this agreement. But Q couldn't see it, which meant either he was missing something, or Zinch was playing a game even more complex than it appeared. Only one way to find out, Q murmured, and vanished toward Mars. Behind him, unnoticed in the space between dimensions, Zinch smiled with all 9 mouths. The game was developing even better than planned. Archmagus Belisarius Cole stood in his personal research sanctum deep beneath Mars's surface, surrounded by 10,000 years of accumulated technology. Ancient STC fragments, xenotech samples, forbidden research materials that would earn him instant execution if discovered by the more orthodox factions of the Mechanicus. He was, by any measure, one of the most brilliant minds in the Imperium. He'd created the Primaris Space Marines, enhanced versions of the Emperor's Angels of Death, through techniques that bordered on heresy. He'd preserved forbidden knowledge across millennia, waiting for moments when innovation might be forgiven as necessity. He'd pushed the boundaries of what the Mechanicus allowed, while maintaining just enough orthodoxy to avoid being declared heretic. And every day, he wondered if the lies were worth it.
Okay, could you please stop burning? Because I don't know if I have. Thank you. Alright.
He whispered in binary cant, examining a particularly troubling piece of xenotech. Another dead end. Q materialized directly in front of him. Carl's mechadendrites snapped toward the intruder, weapons charging. His augmetic eyes cycled through every detection spectrum simultaneously.
Oh, come on.
No warp signature, no teleportation flare, no displacement of matter. The figure had simply appeared, violating every law of physics Cole understood. Fascinating, Carl said, his voice a blend of organic vocal cords and Vox synthesizer. Either I've finally achieved the breakthrough I've sought for millennia, or I'm experiencing catastrophic system failure. Analysis suggests the former, though I've been wrong before. You're not wrong, Q assured him. I'm Q. I'm really here. And I'm about to make you an offer that will either save the Imperium or destroy it. Possibly both. Carl's threat assessment algorithms recalculated. You speak with the confidence of a god or a madman. Given that gods in this universe are generally problematic, I'm hoping for madman. Neither, actually, or both. Depends on your definition. Q snapped his fingers, and suddenly Carl could see, truly see, the fundamental structure of every device in his sanctum. Not just how they worked, but why. The underlying principles, the mathematical elegance, the crude patches where imperial dogma had replaced true understanding. Carl staggered, his processors overheating from the sheer influx of information. Impossible. I'm receiving complete technical specifications for everything. Standard template construct principles. Pre-Dark Age engineering fundamentals. Quantum mechanics beyond anything in Imperial records. How? I'm giving you something your Mechanicus has forgotten, Q said quietly. Understanding, not ritual. Not prayers to the machine spirit. Actual, genuine comprehension of how technology works. This is heresy, Carl whispered. But his mechadendrites were already moving, making notes, recording specifications, his scientific curiosity overwhelming religious conditioning. Is it?
Oh, come on.
Q gestured, and a hololithic display appeared, showing the Mechanicus' history. Your entire religion is based on a misunderstanding. The machine god, the Omnissiah. It's just the Emperor. Your fabricated general made a political alliance during the Unification Wars, dressed it up as theology. And your entire order has been worshipping technology as divine ever since. I suspected as much, Cole admitted. The evidence has always been there for those willing to see it, but suspicion and proof are different things. Now you have proof, and more than that, you have understanding. Q walked around the sanctum, examining Carl's work. You're brilliant. Perhaps the most capable scientist in the Imperium, but you've been hampered by dogma, by the need to justify every innovation as rediscovering ancient techniques rather than genuine creation, by religious restrictions that make progress heresy. Carl's mechadendrites quivered. What do you want from me? I want you to fix the Imperium, Q said bluntly, or at least start the process. I've made a wager with something called Zinch, a chaos god you're probably aware of, that I can guide one person to accomplish meaningful change within a year. You're my choice. Why me? Because you've already proven you're willing to innovate despite the Mechanicus' restrictions. The Primaris Marines, your forbidden research, your constant pushing of boundaries. You're already a heretic by orthodox standards. You're just politically protected by your results. Q's expression grew serious. But here's the catch. I'm not going to guide you step by step. I'm not going to protect you from consequences. I've given you complete understanding of technology. What you do with it is entirely your choice. Carl processed this information through multiple analytical frameworks simultaneously. You're testing me. The same way you tested those soldiers on Armageddon. His systems had access to Imperial data networks the moment Q appeared. I've read the reports. Impossible scenarios. Forced choices.
Oh, we're going to
This
go
is
up.
another experiment.
It's going to get changed and whatnot.
It's not an experiment, Q corrected. It's an opportunity. You now understand technology better than anyone except possibly the Emperor himself.
Stop.
No.
You could revolutionize the Imperium's
We're
production.
gonna go for a wee walk, girl.
Create
We're gonna go
weapons
for a
that
wee
could
walk.
turn the
Alright,
tide
just
against
give me a wee
chaos.
minute.
Develop medicine that could save billions. Advance human civilization by 10,000 years in a decade. Or I could be executed as a heretic and all this knowledge lost. Yes, that's entirely possible. Q didn't try to hide that truth. The Imperium punishes innovation. The Mechanicus abhors genuine understanding. What I've given you is dangerous not just to you, but to the entire power structure that keeps humanity trapped in technological stagnation. Carl was silent for a long moment, his processors running probability calculations. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't, Q said honestly. I'm an entity from outside your reality who's made a bet with a chaos god. I have ulterior motives and my own agenda. But regardless of my reasons, the knowledge I've given you is real. The choice of what to do with it is yours. And if I refuse, if I reject this knowledge and continue as before, then you continue as before. I'll find another champion. Tzeentch will probably win our wager, and I'll leave this universe to its suffering.
Sniper rifles.
Q met Carl's augmetic eyes directly. But you won't refuse. I know your type. You're a scientist at heart. Curiosity is your fundamental programming. You've spent 10,000 years gathering forbidden knowledge.
Like that.
Now that you have complete understanding, you won't be able to resist using it. Carl's mechadendrites twitched, the augmetic equivalent of a nervous laugh. You're right. Emperor, forgive me. You're absolutely right. He turned to his workbenches, already mentally redesigning half his projects with his newfound understanding. I'll need time, resources, protection from the more orthodox factions. The political maneuvering alone. You have 1 year, Q interrupted. After that, the wager concludes, and I'll either be staying in this universe or leaving forever. Make it count. Q started to fade, but paused. One more thing. Tzeentch chose Ahriman as his champion, the sorcerer of the Thousand Suns. Whatever you're going to do, assume he's doing something parallel. This is a competition. Ahriman. Cal's processors flagged the name immediately. The one who cursed his own legion? The Chaos Champion is your competition. He's not actually a Chaos Champion. He rejects the gods, seeking knowledge for its own sake. Rather like you, actually. Q's expression grew contemplative.
Alright, we'll call it
makes
there
me
for now,
wonder
so
what
I'm
Tzeentch's
gonna take
planned.
Bell at all walk.
But that's my problem, not
get
yours.
back.
You just focus on doing
We'll
what you do
continue
best.
the battle.
Innovating despite the Imperium's best efforts to stop you. Q vanished, leaving Carl alone with more knowledge than any human had possessed since the dark age of technology. The Archmagos stood motionless for exactly 17 seconds, processing. Then his mechadendrites burst into activity, pulling up schematics, running calculations, designing technologies that had been impossible minutes ago. The Omnissiah preserved me, he whispered. I'm going to change everything, or die trying. Possibly both. In his sanctum, deep beneath Mars, Belisarius Cawl began the most dangerous work of his already controversial life, trying to save the Imperium through the one thing it feared most. Progress. The Blood Ravens chapter maintained a fortress monastery on the world of Aurelia, a strategic position in the Segmentum Obscurus. They were a chapter shrouded in mystery, their founding records lost or deliberately obscured.